Robinson, but you're not here to see me, you're here to see some other folks. So let's bring to the stage composer Dan Romer. Director Sarah Gina Smith. Peter Claffey. And Ira Parker. Oh, hello. This is a great group of people, but I kind of feel like someone important is missing here. I think we might have a message, though, to share with everyone.
Hey guys, it's Dexter, Sol, and Sol here. I'm really sorry I can't be there. I've got squire duties to attend to because Sir Duncan is with all you. So I'm missing him and missing all of you. But I really hope you enjoy season 2 when it all comes out. And I'll see you there. Bye for now.
That isn't true. He's on holidays, I think.
That was Majorca.
I heard he was on Harry Potter now.
I want to start by asking you a question about the Peter and Dex relationship. Of course, it's so important to nail this. You don't have a show if you don't have this. So what was your day like when you discovered that you had really found it in the audition process?
I never slept so fucking well. Look, I mean, we spent so long writing the show and getting the creative team in place, only to then realize that in order for the show to work, we needed a 7-foot-tall giant and an 8-year-old kid to actually embody these roles. 99% of our screen time was gonna go to them. And so, like, the moment that you two stood in that room next to each other and we're ripping through those scenes and just relating to each other, I just, like, okay, we have a shot. We get to go shoot this thing now. And, yeah, thanks, guys.
Peter, can you describe your meet cute with Dex? What was that like?
That was right at the end of the audition process. Was like the first chemistry read with him, and it was, I've said so much, it's like you're coming in with a child actor as 9 years old, so you're like, I'm going to have to help him through stuff and different things, and then you realise you're meeting a like 40-year-old man inside a 9-year-old's body. He's just, he's incredible. It's like, especially not even just the show, but doing things like this and being so comfortable talking to all these people. Like, I don't know any other kid, 9-year-old or anything that would be able to do stuff like that. I was still rolling around in my own shit when I was doing it. I don't know how he does it, but yeah, he's a good dude.
And for you, was there a moment when you were filming this season, a scene or a moment with Dunk where you're like, I got it, I've locked in, I've got this part, I know it?
Like during the filming process?
Sure, final episode, when did it happen for you?
I think, thankfully we had so much rehearsal time, which was great, and that full first, and it was done fairly chronologically. Like that full first episode was like all the big scenes were rehearsed with cast and everything by the time we got into it. But I think, you know, the speech on horseback was a huge part of the audition process, and probably swang on that point. And when that was coming up in the schedule, if it was 3 weeks away, 2 weeks away, it was looming, and there was I wanted to really nail that bit, because we kept calling it the Braveheart speech because it's on horseback. But when we got it, I remember when we got it, and you were like, I'm happy we nailed it. And I like took off on Garacha, the horse, and just took off around and pulled out my sword and was like this with all the extras and stuff. And Tom Cox, the head of the Devil's Horsemen that are the horse masters on the thing, was like, yeah, you're not allowed to do that, but I get you were really, really happy with that. Yeah, it was probably that moment.
Sarah, what was that like for you when he absolutely crushed it on horseback?
That was one of my favorite Emery's directing ever, really. First of all, thank God Peter can ride a horse. Otherwise it would be a lot more difficult to film, but he's actually took to horses so naturally that we were able to film with a lot of freedom and give you freedom to really move how you wanted to move on the horse, which was really nice to be able to track with you. And every once in a while when you're directing, you forget that you're directing and you're just watching like an audience member. And it was one of those moments where I felt like Ira, is this a false memory of mine? I feel like you were standing there with me and I turned to you and said, I think we just watched the birth of a movie star. Like this guy, he's got it. And I felt like we got to witness that moment, and yeah, I'll never forget it. It was really special. And I had nothing to do with it other than like saying, okay, let's record it.
That's not true. I don't know, to be honest with you, both you and Owen as well, I don't know how he did those days out in Glenarm, because it was so busy and having so many people.
Oh, the mud.
Yeah, it was and to coordinate that was insane.
Yeah, and wasps.
Oh, I think half the budget went on the VFXing the wasps out of. The point when I had to lie down and like completely, like when you think he's dead or whatever, there was a wasp crawling across my eyeball, like the whites of my eye, and I was like, oh fuck, like if this stings.
Moment of, do you want this job or not?
If I didn't have my contacts in here now, this would be a blur, so I don't have a lot to work with my eyes anyway, so I was like, if this gets stung here, I'm screwed. Yeah.
Dan, I'm really jealous of everyone in this room that just got to sit through one of my favorite Thrones moments of all time, which is the end of episode 4, when the Game of Thrones theme gets blended with the Dunk theme, and it's just this transcendent Thrones moment where this show sort of really marries with the larger Westeros universe. Can you talk to me about putting those two together and how you want to make it familiar but new at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, being given that task was like one of the most exciting, honorable things that I've ever done in my life. It was just like, I get to like remake this Game of Thrones theme and then wind my own melodies into it. And thank God, tempo-wise, it's just like, we weren't thinking about that. We weren't like, oh, the Dunk theme should work with the Game of Thrones theme, but it did. And that idea, I mean, it wasn't my idea to do this. It came from you guys. But yeah, it was just like such an incredible thing to get to do. And then getting to just have that Game of Thrones riff, the da-da-da-da underneath the entire thing was just like such an amazing like piece of machinery to have underneath that melody,
Whose idea was it to put it under the Baelor entrance there?
All right.
I don't know. We work as a team. We don't have
Yeah.
ideas like that.
I think it was Dexter's.
Oh, okay. Dexter's idea. Well, Ira, let me ask you a bigger question, which is, you're making this beautiful show that's inside of a larger universe that a lot of people are familiar with. So how do you balance these moments of familiarity, the Thrones music in the first episode or in the 4th episode, or we know a Targaryen, we know a Baratheon, with this sort of new world building that you're doing at the same time?
We just kept going back to the book. It was easy. It was all, it was in there for us, and we all came to this project for the right reasons, because we loved the novella, because we loved the character of Dunk, of Sir Duncan the Tall, and so it felt natural making these decisions. It felt, every question we ever had in the editing process always came back to, well, what is Dunk feeling right now? What is his POV of the scene? And then that just, it opens up every creative avenue for it. It says, this is, he's feeling heroic now, he's feeling nervous now, he's feeling like he has a little bit of hope now. And that's, when you let your soul POV character guide all of your decisions, I guess good things start to happen.
Well, Peter, that's a question I have for you, which is so much of the novella is inside of Dunk's head. And obviously, in adapting the novella, they did you some favors, like you're talking to your horse, so some of those inner thoughts become horse chats. But in general, Dunk's not a very talkative, loquacious guy. How did you navigate those moments of real internal thought, knowing you had this internal monologue reference in the novella? How are you making sure that translates in what you're doing?
I spent the first half of the whole thing having an internal battle myself anyway, trying not to have a panic attack all day long, because it was just so nerve-wracking. So I think that all sort of led its way in, and I think it was just when you absorb that first novella and really kind of get down to it and read it, it was so easy to sort of let yourself into the character at that point. So I just had those sort of thoughts basically swimming around in my head throughout the shooting of the whole thing, and it was quite easy to sort of to let yourself dwell on those things when it needed to in that scene, and then whatever that came out in my facial expression seemed to have worked, I think. But yeah.
Peter's a genius. Peter is one of the most natural actors I've ever met in my entire life. His ability to embody all of that, it's a great question, because that's what he did for us every single day. That stuff is not always there on the page. He goes and he figures out completely on his own what he's going to do, and he doesn't get enough credit for that, because the truth is there is a lot of Peter in the role, but there's this entirely other level of what you are adding for this character that is no way close. And sometimes we would even have to tell you, I'd say, give us the Peter take, just be you for a second, And I actually didn't 100% appreciate what you had done until we were in Rome and I heard you croon Frank Sinatra with such fucking confidence and totally anti-Dunk in every single way. Just the coolest human being on planet Earth with a great voice.
That was just a lot of alcohol.
Oh my God. No. It was, I was just okay. This whole thing was just one of the most brilliant performances I've ever seen in my whole life. So thanks, bud.
Talking about POV, Sarah, I wanted to ask you. So this is a story so much from Dunk's POV, but also we spend a little time with Egg without Dunk. We open up into Egg's POV. Can you talk about how do you show us visually whose head we're inside of this season?
Well, episode 3 is kind of the Egg episode. We do break away from Dunk, which is very rare in this show, and get to go on a little Egg adventure. And so 3 sort of invites us into that language, and then once you've then established it, you can kind of continue it as needed. I think 4 is very much Dunk's. I always thought of it as your dark night of the soul, and I talked a lot about what would it be like if you knew you were going to die at dawn, and if this was your last night. And so I felt we really wanted to ground 4 in that feeling. I remember this one shot when you're walking in the pouring rain that we always called your dead man walking shot, abandon all hope. And then, so there's not as much of the Egg POV in 4, but once you've gotten to be with him in 3, I think it comes through as needed then in 4.
But that opening of I remember when you did that. After that day, you came to me. What was it you said about Dexter?
I don't remember.
It was something along the lines of I just watched Dexter become,
Oh yeah. Oh, that was so great. It's so great I loved working with these guys. It's really a privilege to get to do this job, and especially with people who are at the beginning of their careers and are so talented, but maybe haven't fully found their stride in their craft yet. And it's an honor for me to get to like hold hands with them for a little bit and walk them through some fires, and then they see their confidence grow. It was a beautiful thing. Yeah, that opening shot, I remember we tested it out. Was this going to work or not? We really wanted this idea of, in earlier episodes, you've got the shooting star, and we're wondering, what will Dunk's fate bring? And now here we are, he's under the stars again, and then we realize he's in prison, and all of that was very planned. But then we had this really beautiful, happy accident. When I was thinking about how to block it and where to put Dunk, I realized if we just put him at this one exact spot and had our camera at the right angle, the window looked like a crown, like a fool's crown. And I just, it's like the best gift. Those are the moments like that really make the whole slog of everything worthwhile.
There's a point though, like there's so many amazing actors in the show, but I think for me the greatest performance is in 6, when he walks in, was Dexter walking into Arian's room, and I was like, and he, like, it's genuinely one of the most profound performances I've ever seen. And he, like, when I talk to him about it, he like holds you as accountable for getting him there as well. He's like, I wouldn't have been able to get there without Sarah, because it's heartbreaking.
I was really, I'm worried about him because it's dark stuff for a kid, like holding a knife and contemplating whether or not to kill his brother. And it's a hard scene because it's wordless. We're talking about 6 now. You guys have
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, just ruined it.
Who in this room has seen the full season? We can talk about the full season. They know.
Spoilers for those who haven't. But by that time we had really developed a language working together, and so
the gummy worms as well.
Oh yeah, there was also just pure braggery.
I never got any gummy worms. I never got any. Just like this. It's like, we're going to get this taken.
You did good. You get one worm.
Little gummy worm. It's so funny.
By the time we got to 6, Dexter and I really had to trust, and we, got to talk about how you can let yourself go to as dark of a place as you need, and you can always come back. And like, it was really about the coming back and making sure that felt safe, and he knew how to do that. And so once he felt okay about that, I think he was able to make that leap. And to watch it and to see him go for it.
I just, one thing as well that I have to say is there's a point at the start of 3 that people need to know, is when Dexter goes off training with Thunder while Dunk is asleep. That was my only day off, which was great. But I came in and heard that he had to do a lot of running in his bare feet through the grass and the muck and everything, and it was soaking wet and freezing. And we obviously had these fake feet for him to put on so that he could do it, but
They looked stupid.
They looked so stupid.
They looked horrible on camera.
There's a point when it got really close, so he had to take them off, and he was feeling quite nervous. And Sarah took off her own shoes and socks and did it first, and also did it with him on her back, right? And ran through or something.
Well, there was a lot of sheep shit in there. So I had to be like, I can do sheep shit on my feet too.
Yeah, but people need to know that. What I say.
One moment that I really love, this is for Dan and Sarah together, there's the big egg reveal that happens. The way the camera shifts around, and then the way, Dan, you scored that sort of like dun dun like moment. Can you talk about getting Sarah's footage and what direction you had in terms of making that score match the mood that you wanted to nail there?
Yeah, well, the tempo was pre-decided by the cuts. This like cut, 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 cut. So it really laid out what the entire piece would kind of feel like, and yeah, it was just getting to do this kind of like old scary classical pastiche, and it was just like, yeah, it was so much fun to do. I mean, and the fact that it was predetermined that way really put it on these rails that made me feel like really confident about what I was going to write over it, you know.
And Sarah, once you saw it scored, like, how did you feel once you saw it with the score underneath?
Okay, well, moment of truth here. I didn't like the way that was cut. But Ira was right. Sometimes I'm wrong. I mean, it feels like, are we going too far here? The way that, but people love it. So clearly I'm wrong.
It's out there.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Ira, in we already talked about how you absolutely nailed it with Dex and Peter, but I'm curious, what was the other role in this season that was either the hardest or you felt the most important to cast? Someone like Baelor Targaryen, you have so little time to fall in love with him before George R. R. Martin breaks our heart once again with what happens with him, spoilers. So, was it Birdie? Who was it where you were just sort of like, how are we gonna find this that we need?
Look, it's sort of all of them. There's no easy. Everybody has their very specific quirks. These characters, and they all have to fucking nail it. Otherwise it just doesn't work as nice. I mean, Birdie's a genius. He's a chameleon. The fact that he's played. Who's in the Crown? What's the?
Oh, he played.
Tony Blair, right?
Tony Blair. I think he's played like Trump on stage, Then
Trunchbull and Matilda.
That's right, Trunchbull.
He was Trunchbull.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
What? Fucking hell.
Yeah, he's good too. And, yeah.
Oh my God. That's the plane journey home sort of.
Well, for you, Peter, you're 4 years into your on-screen career, and you have this massive role, but you are surrounded by your Birdies and your Sams and all of these other veterans that are in the cast. Was there anyone, and it might be Dex, but was there any actor who you really felt like you learned a lot from on the set?
There's, not a lot of people will know the show, but there's the best crime drama that we have in Ireland is called Love Hate. And when we went in to and I remember you and Owen going like, what's it? And it was like up in the cast wall, it was like Plumber, the master of the games and working for Lord Ashford was Tom Vaughan Lawler, who played Nidge who's one of the most famous, gruesome, awful characters in Irish television history. And when I saw that he was up there, I was terrified. It's just such a hero.
He's the loogie guy.
He's the lad that's all the time. But he, and then turns out to be just one of the loveliest, nicest people ever, and a good friend now. It's just is so beautiful to get to work with him. But I think and when you're talking about roles that were so important, I imagine, or important to cast, I really don't think there's obviously you've got Baelor and you've got all these really integral parts, but people don't kind of see how important Raymond Fossaway is. I think there's no show without Sean at all. I think he was, and obviously because you have, Finn is amazing at Arian and that had to be nailed and stuff, but the beautiful friendship and the sort of loving aspect of the show just doesn't happen without Sean, definitely.
Oh, I love Sean.
Yeah.
I feel like the casting in general is so good, and that's all Ira and Owen, and I just got to inherit it, but truly nailed every single role and made the show.
Yeah.
Sarah, you already revealed that the ending on the egg reveal was not your favorite and what you wanted, but
I kind of don't want to be in the middle here. Punch holes.
Wait, what do
Well, my question
you
was-
still want to talk about it?
But no, my question was, there's this great tonal shift at the beginning of the finale, episode 6, from the devastation at the end of 5 to this sort of, like Lionel Baratheon and his dodgy maester sort of looming over Dunk. There's some fun music which Dan did not write, so I would ask Dan about it. But like some fun jaunty music playing over it. What was the decision behind? I love that opening, but it's a very sort of like light comedic opening after the devastation of 5. So whose idea was that, and how did we come to that?
I mean, I think the tone of this show and Ira's writing is really what drew me to the piece, where it feels actually like a lot like life to me, like where really horrible, dark things can happen, and also life is absurd and very funny too. And so that just felt very in keeping with the tone of the show. Like it never, I've always seen it as like an existential dark comedy, a little bit, where, you know, here's this good but not perfect, flawed guy trying to make his way in a corrupt world, and the odds are really against him. And so there's just something also inherently funny about that. He's got, imposter syndrome, and so it gave us a lot of freedom to be funny where we wanted to be funny, but it didn't like lessen the stakes at all.
That was actually my favorite shot, though, in the whole show. Just the way that you framed Danny and our maester looming over Dunk, and just holding on that for the whole beginning. It makes me so happy. And the music comes out of that. And Dan, even though he didn't compose it, was very much in the yes, we have to fucking do this. We have to put this in. So
I was into it, yeah.
I love the jazz. I'm really into it. But for you, Dan, for nailing that tone of sort of when things get really dark and when things are very light, how do you musically manage to balance those two tones? And are there certain specific instruments that you really feel suit one or the other?
I mean, I feel like as far as the darkness and the lightness, it's so in the show. It's so in the writing, it's so in the directing, it's so in the acting. Like, it's so there. And I feel like I just have to give it like a little support, just like the slightest little push, and that's what works the best. You know, if it's over the top, then it becomes a little bit. You don't need to be told that much. You know, it's nice to just get a little push on it.
For you, for Ira, as a fan of the novellas, this is an incredibly faithful adaptation, and I'm so happy about that. And I know that you had talked to George R. R. Martin, and he said, "Hey, I really want a faithful adaptation." And you were like, "You got it, I'll do it." But when you take a big swing like you did in episode 5 with like a large flashback sequence, it's not in the novellas. What is that process like? Creating something like that out of whole cloth? Are you checking with George? How are you engineering that?
No, look, at the end of the day, when I spoke to George, I said, no matter what, the story will be the story. The beginning will be the beginning, the middle, and the end. And we just have to fill out the characters, and we have to have a little bit of fun. You know, I would say at the end of the day, in order to we had, just straight from the novella, probably about half of what we needed in order to make these 6 episodes at, however long they ended up being at. But we had slowly started doing it from the very beginning, just, pumping up certain characters, telling a little bit, of a different story, filling out, even the egg-dunk relationship. That was one of my favorite things that you guys did. That was on one of your days when they did when they were impersonating each other. I think that was some of the only improv that ended up making it into the cut, but it was so perfect, and it tells you so much about people's relationships without needing to work too hard and really, feed the audience their vegetables. That was, sort of the goal that we had with the flashback too. It's a little bit of a longer extended section of storytelling, but we drew so much from these novellas. Obviously, Rafe and Pudding and Ferret are mentioned by name in the novellas. It doesn't go into a lot about it, other than I think Ferret had filed down teeth because he fought in the fighting pits, which, man, I keep trying to get in there and it just keeps falling out again. But the relationship between, look, you're telling a story essentially about a guy who's trying to find his family. He's an orphan. He came into this world and he didn't have anything. And who, your first family that's not truly your family are your friends, that the kids, they just kick around with. And so it had to be at that stage of his life, that's where, he was putting all of that love that would normally go to a mother, a father, a brother, or sister. He went on to Rafe, and all of her, his hopes were there. And then when that doesn't work out, it ends up being put onto Sir Arlen, with this father figure. He chases after him, and he doesn't exactly know why he's doing this. He just feels drawn to that. I think just because there's been a vacuum created in his life, and you naturally go towards these feelings of love drive you towards that. And then when Sir Arlen leaves him, all of a sudden now we have a new vacuum created when this little stable boy just turns up out of the blue, And even when you're not looking for it, Dunk says no, go away, I don't want this. You're trying to go on your own. But then you sort of, throughout that first episode, Dunk realizes just how lonely it is. And when this kid turns up again, we wanted there to be a marriage between episode 5 and episode 1, where Dunk just kept going after Sir Arlen. And he wasn't exactly sure why, but he kept chasing him. And eventually Sir Arlen came to the same conclusion that Dunk did, which is that it's hard to go this life alone. And this is the same thing that's happened to Dunk after being kicked around a little bit by everybody at the tournament and things not going his way. This kid has, chased him again and turned up at his camp. And he said, okay, I'll let you stay. And it's as much for him as it is for Egg, I think.
I love that. Sarah mentioned this idea of this is a sort of a straightforward hero's journey. Peter, I'm curious about what you think it is about Dunk that everyone I know who watched the show is just so emotionally invested in Dunk. What do you think it is about that kind of character right now that people are just really thirsty for?
I think there's I suppose the fact that, being a massive fan of the original Game of Thrones, and then you have House of Dragon stuff, it centres around, highborn people and kings and princes and in huge halls and discussing matters of enormous importance throughout the realm or the world, and it's the first time that you get to see somebody from, as we would say in Ireland, the dirt of the road, just kind of navigating through this world that we're so used to, but only in the eyes of these highborn people. And I think people can really sort of find a commonality with Dunk, that he's just trying to make his way through the world with I suppose like decent chivalrous morals and values, and trying to adhere to them in a quite a weird world of Westeros where that's hard to come by, and you sort of, which isn't too different from our own world at the minute. I suppose it's quite feels like it's on fire, but I think it's just nice to see a hero's story of somebody that represents those decent morals and doesn't have an agenda in the back of his head. He just wants to be a decent person and hopefully learn how to talk to women at some point. Yeah, and I think a lot of people.
Season 2.
Yeah, I think if I was watching, I'd be like, I feel you, man. I've been there big time. Yeah.
Sarah, I know that in the scope of the Westerosi shows that exist at HBO, this one has a smaller budget than the other ones. It's something that you all have talked about a lot. I love hearing from showrunners or directors about necessity, budgetary constraints being the mother of invention. Can you talk about some things that you sort of made work that you weren't sure how you were going to pull it off?
Like every single day, like every minute of every day. I'm always enlivened by that kind of challenge. I'm not saying don't give me money for my budget. But I think that you always want to be stretching beyond what's possible, and you're not doing your job right if you're not reaching for something that is just over that edge. And so every day was, and it's not just about, we're not just maximizing shots, it's about, trying something very ambitious and then amidst all of that chaos, being ready for surprise too. Being ready. One of my favorite shots, do you remember this? We were just, it's episode 4, the knighting sequence, and we were just, camera was on a crane and we were reframing, and you just were on the horse and you just looked right up at camera, and I was like, oh, fuck, we need to roll on that shot. That's an amazing shot. So it's like moments like that where that day was impossible to shoot. I think it was my first week of shooting was all that list field stuff in episode 4. And it was crazy, really like just, you can't lose a minute because there's so much to do.
Remember the fan for all the fog? Do you remember it?
Oh God, the fan,
Oh,
the fog,
my
and yeah, oh God, yeah.
To try and make it look as foggy and grey.
Yeah, so there was like
Ultra
bright sun
massive
sometimes, and yeah. Everything, and just moving gear on that list field and everything, it's just really, it's a slog. But then, like, if you can stay open and then you see a moment like that and it's not on the shot list, but you get it, and it's like, it is one of my favorite shots. So I forgot what your question was, but
you answered it anyway.
It's fun. I don't know. I think that being a little hungry is a good thing.
Dan, I'm curious, you started telling me, but I didn't get the full story backstage, that you and Ira sort of got on a Zoom call together to compose the dunk theme. Can you talk about that process, just composing live with the showrunner over Zoom?
Yeah, absolutely. That was at the very beginning, obviously, we were writing the main theme. I was running from the fires. I think I had gotten down, I was in San Diego for a little while, then I'd gotten a tiny little place in Joshua Tree for like a week, and I brought all of my instruments I knew I was going to use on Game of Thrones, on Seven Kingdoms, to the little cabin, and we zoomed, and what we were talking about was trying to make a melody that felt at first very traditional, and then took unexpected turns, and so we started writing that melody, and it at a certain point became like sort of like auditioning almost note for note. Like when we found the da 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 da, we're like, okay, we have that. That's like our traditional melody that we have. And then Ira was sort of like, now what can we do that would subvert expectations on that melody? What would you normally do? And then it's like, well, I would normally probably do another melody that sort of like repeats that rhythm, like a da 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 da. It's like, that's not what I want. We want the opposite. What's the opposite? So we were like, well, we could have these little starter phrases. And so we kind of note by note devised this da 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 thing as our second group of notes. And yeah, it was like, once we kind of found that melody, and that was what we were basing everything on, the other melodies kind of just fell into place really easily because we understood the mission of what the melodies were supposed to sound like in this show.
Ira, yeah.
The stuff that he comes up with on the spot is incredible. Like,
Ira, can you sing it?
I can't. Oh, no. This was the hardest part of the whole show for me because I don't have musical language. So I'm trying to explain to you which part I'm talking about. And so some singing was done, but I try to avoid that as much as possible. But you would always figure it out. We just had an immediate rapport where you sort of got what my ramblings meant, and then you would come up with these things on the fly that just, that's one of those beautiful fucking phrases. Is that a musical phrase?
That works.
Yeah, sure. Uh-huh.
And thank you.
Yeah, that I've ever heard. And anyways, it was such a pleasure. And the fact that you just, I think talking to you about it, in the very early goings, you're like, yeah, I understand this. I understand what it's like to sleep in my fucking car as I'm trying to chase after a dream. If sleeping in your car while you're trying to, become whatever, a musician is not the equivalent of sleeping under a tree, you know, when you're about to go, you know, joust the next day. You know, I don't know what it is, but it's we're very lucky to have you on this. We're very lucky to have you brought this sense of whimsy that is so inherent in the novella and in our show, that we are essentially, you know, we're telling a story in a lot of ways about two kids, you know, with the different dreams, but dreams to go out and to have an adventure, and there just needed to be just a little bit of lightness. We didn't want to get rid of the seriousness of Game of Thrones. We want to make sure it felt authentic, but it should just feel hopeful and youthful in that way that, you know, it's a coming of age story, and you brought that every single day, no matter what we were doing. It also helps that he's a professionally trained opera singer, so his singing, you know, on the moment was very good and helped me through a lot of this. But
This was my first chance to make opera stuff. I mean, this is the first time I've gotten to do classical choir stuff in my entire life. It was enthralling.
and Sarah tried to make us cut it all out.
All right, I got the high sign, so I have one last quick question. And HBO did tell me I could ask this question. So, sort of rapid fire down the line, what about season 2 can you say to whet the appetite of this audience, each of you who are involved in season 2?
What can we say about season 2?
Just give them a little morsel to get excited.
There's a book. Just read the book.
All right, on that note,
I will say there's some really, really brilliant performances already so far. Incredible stuff.
obviously, Sam, I'm so excited.
Oh man.
All right, thank you everyone. Thank you to HBO.